Hello everyone, thanks for coming outside with me today. Today I'd like to take a look at saddle hunting versus tree stand hunting and the pros and cons of each side. I'm going to try to take this from an analytical approach as best I can. One thing we cannot use as an analytical approach is comfort. It's such an important differentiated thing from person to person, so I'm not going to use comfort because saddle hunting for me is by far the most comfortable. So we're going to try to do things with like weight, modularity, how well you can adapt it to your setup, mobility, and of course price point. So let's first start off with tree stand hunting and more specifically climbing tree stands. This guy right here behind me is an ancient gorilla climbing tree stand. I hunted out of this thing for well over a decade, shot many deer out of it with both a bow and a rifle. Now in terms of price point, you can get climbing tree stands from as low as you can get it all the way as high. It's from about $100 up to the several hundreds depending on the different brands that you want to look into. This gorilla cost about $100, $120, but that was again about a decade ago. So of course prices have changed. It has a mesh seat to it, typical backpack straps, has a pin system for the cables that go around the tree. It folds flat, but those are again all things that are kind of your personal preference. So you could find a tree stand that fits your comfort level and fits your price point based on the things that you want with the tree stand itself. But there's not much modularity with a climbing tree stand. Pretty much you have to work with what's on the tree stand. You can't change the arms, you can't change out the cables, you can change out the backpack straps, maybe change out the seat, but there's not a whole lot of things you can do to a climbing tree stand to make it better and more efficient for your setup. It's pretty much stuck as is. Now in terms of mobility, you can go with a lightweight aluminum climbing tree stand all the way to a heavy steel one. This is a heavy steel one. Like I said, it's a little bit of an older model and it is a lot of weight, and it doesn't have a kidney belt on it. These backpack straps are pretty thin. You feel it on your shoulders. Now, in terms of its weight, it does make up for it in the sense that there is no other part to it. The climbing tree stand is what it is. There's no sticks, there's no extra seat, there's no stand and stick combination, there's nothing weird like that. The whole climbing system and your seated system is in one thing. So in terms of mobility and modularity, it's kind of a win-win with both those categories combined. There are, however, two humongous downsides to a climbing tree stand. One is the noise level. If you don't go up in price point and get a whole bunch of different rubberized things, like the Lone Wolf has a particular belt system that goes through a silent belt system, if you don't go up in price point, you're talking a lot of noise. This old ancient thing, it doesn't take a whole lot. I mean, you can hear it. You know, you're moving it up and down the tree, you can hear all the clinking and clanking of the metal parts. And I haven't gotten this tree stand out in a while until today. It's probably been 2 or 3 years since I hunted out of it. I forgot how loud this thing is. There's all these different moving parts make noise, and that just gets worse over time as the tree stand gets older. You can have all this rusted part on it because it's steel and not aluminum. There's a lot of different issues you can have with a climbing tree stand, and particularly one that's like this. Now, in terms of also going up tree, you have to have a tree that is perfect for a climbing tree stand. You can't have any branches coming off on the side. You have to have a straight, not leaning. The tree has to be the right diameter, and if it doesn't fit in that particular category, you can't climb that tree, which has ruined many spots for me over the years. I have to pick a tree that's a little bit further away, or maybe I have to forget about that hunting spot altogether. The second tree stand we have over here is an XOP Vanish XT stand. Really love this hang-on stand. It's a very nice, lightweight, cast aluminum stand, much like its counterparts, the Lone Wolves. Now, the hang-on market has exploded in the past 5 to 7 years. Everyone wants to go lighter and faster and smaller. Millennium makes the M7 Microlight. Of course, you've always had Lone Wolf XOP. Hawk this year in 2020 released their 7-pound ultralight stand as well. So you have a lot of lightweight stands on the market, very quiet, very simple, and are really nice for those of us that hunt public land and run and gun. The simplicity of a hang-on stand really drew me away from the wanting to hunt out of a loud, clunky climber for many, many more years. And the simplicity is that it's just a couple of cinch straps. You stick it onto the tree, you cinch it on, you climb up in and you sit down. That's it. There's no clinking and clanking. You just get up the tree, put on the stand, you sit down, and you get on to hunting. In terms of the mobility, you can get these in as light or as heavy as you want, and same thing's true with the price. You can get them in as light as and heavy as you want. The steel ones are going to be cheaper, but of course they're going to be heavier. The aluminums are going to be lighter, but of course they're going to be way more expensive. Now this Vanish XT runs about, I think I paid $130, $140 for it. That's pretty average nowadays for the lightweight lightweight hang-on market. I've really had no complaints about it. It's been a really robust design. I've taken it through many beatings. I've loaned it to a buddy, and he's beat it through the woods before. The paint's holding up. The structure's really strong. It's been a really comfortable and quiet tree stand for us in the woods these past few years. Modularity-wise, there is a good number of things you can do with a hang-on stand compared to a climber. You can change out the seats very quickly, very easily. You can add silencing materials such as stealth strips or wrapping things in paracord, make it a little bit quieter. That's hard to do with a climber because of all the moving parts, but since most of the stuff on a hang-on is stationary, you can stop things like your squeaky rubber boots, you can stop things like pins smashing into each other, you can be careful with your cam buckles as they go around the tree and they don't whack off the upright beam of the tree stand. There's lots of different things you can do to ensure that your tree stand is still safe that you can't do with a climber. Also, with the stuff you would add to a hang-on stand typically means a lot less, and therefore it's a lot less weight. You don't have a whole bunch of silencing things you can do because they're pretty quiet as they are. Whereas a climber, you could add many layers of stealth strips and paracord and whatever else to quiet this down, and all you're doing is adding weight. So if I was stuck with a tree stand choice, I would 100% go with a lightweight hang-on. Now, the only problem is that you can't just go with a lightweight hang-on. You also have to find climbing sticks, and that's the other big issue. You can have a nice lightweight hang-on, but if you have big, heavy, steel, clunky sticks, you're going to be still up the creek without a paddle. You've subtracted some tree stand weight, but you haven't subtracted the method of getting up the tree. Remember, the climber is the whole system. You climb up the tree and you sit down, but you have to get up the tree with a hang-on. Now, there are many different stick manufacturers on the market. Hawk makes some with their helium sticks. Now they release their mini sticks. Lone Wolf and XOP also make some. These are API sticks. They're kind of hard to find these days. I have modified these into mini sticks, so they're very lightweight and very small and very portable. I've also, because of the modularity of a hang-on system compared to the climber, I've also eliminated the clunky cam buckle strap, which if you swing around the tree, you could clink off a stick and make a lot of noise. And I've gone with hammock straps. I've added an aider, a fixed aider, so I can get a little bit extra length. The whole thing weighs about 8 pounds for 3 sticks, and I can get 15 to 19 feet off the ground depending on how I space them. So don't forget, don't blow all of your money onto a nice hang-on and then forget about the lightweight stick part on the back end as well. All right, so the last piece of the puzzle is saddle hunting, and I've been super excited to be doing some saddle hunting this past year. Spent all season out of my own DIY sit drag saddle, but now I've kind of upgraded my gear. I'll show you that here in a little bit, but let's first talk about the pros and cons of saddle hunting and if it's right for you. So we talked about the mobility and modularity of the climber stand and the hang-on stand, and in terms of mobility and modularity, you're talking saddle hunting is that to a T. You can modify your saddle system any way you want. You can have any type of platform that you want. You can have any method of getting up the tree that you want. Just like with your hang-on stand, you're gonna need a set of climbing sticks or another way to get up the tree. In terms of mobility, saddle hunting hands down wins. It is the lightest setup by far and large. Now you can go heavier saddle setups and the lightest, most minimalist saddle setups, but even at their heavier end, they are still going to be lighter than almost any single hang-on stand and definitely any climbing stand that's on the market today. However, unlike your hang-on stands and your climbers, your saddle system is going to be expensive. Unless you go full DIY like I did this year, you're gonna be shelling out some money. Now, this is a Predator platform. It runs more than this whole tree stand right here. So that's kind of a sticker. If you have an actual saddle, like from Tethered or H2 or Kestrel from the Arrow Hunter company, you're also talking another couple $100 there on top of it. So in terms of the price point, this is by far the most expensive. However, in my opinion, it is 100% worth it if you want to be mobile, the most mobile you can, want to be as comfortable as you can, which again, comfort is a very subjective thing, but trust me, I'm 6'4", 215 pounds. If I can be comfortable in it, so can you. One of the last pieces of the puzzle is what kind of trees can you saddle hunt out of? Well, it's the same tree you can hang a hang-on in. So with a climber, you have to have a straight, perfectly nice tree, no branches, just like this one we have all these stands attached to. With a hang-on, you can get away with it. You can get away with a tree that's got some branches going this way and that. You can get away with an evergreen with it's just full and flora. But in the saddle, you can get in some of the sketchiest, and when I say sketchy, I don't mean unsafe. I just mean that has to be the tree. Now, your hang-on will fit in there too, but the saddle is so much smaller. The platform, the actual footprint is so much smaller. You can really nestle yourself in between some branches. Whereas the hang-on system, no matter how small you get it, it's still going to be significantly larger larger than a platform system or a ring of steps or some wild edge steps. So in terms of your actual footprint of you getting up into a tree and nestling yourself in, having great back cover, which is something even at my large size, I really like nestling into trees, having lots of back cover, lots of canopy. If I can draw my bow in there and have 1 or 2 shooting lanes, I'm gonna hunt that spot if it's the best spot to be in. So now really quickly, let's talk about actually shooting out of these systems. So with a climber, it depends if you have a closed climber, just like this one here, if you have an open climber, meaning there's no bar that goes out in the front. Shooting a gun out of all of these systems is gonna be the exact same thing, but shooting a bow is a totally different story. And particularly if you're like me and you like a longer axle to axle bow, you're gonna have more things that have to clear around your tree stand. I've actually dinged a few bow cams off the arms of this climber. I've hit a rifle stock off of the front end. There's been a lot of noise and commotion that's happened in this climber stand over the past decade, but that doesn't make it a bad stand. It's super easy to pivot and move around in when you actually are standing. You can still shoot on the back side of the tree. You just have to finagle yourself around a little bit more. So in terms of actual shot presence, it depends on the type of stand that you have and also the way you position yourself on the tree, but I wouldn't give it a bad rating whatsoever. It's definitely still very open. You still have a lot of shots, but in a tree stand like this, I was never able to shoot sitting down, which is something that all of us who've been in the whitetail woods before know, that sometimes you just have to be able to make a instant shot from sitting, and you just can't do that in most climbers, in particular if you shoot, like I said earlier, a longer to axle bow. Hang-on stands and saddles, on the other hand, there is nothing there to impede you. If you have a shot angle and you have a shooting lane, you can take it. You can stand up, you can turn around, you can simply pivot, you can shoot from seated. Everything works well out of a hang-on or out of a saddle system. Now in a saddle, everything's just backwards, right? So in a hang-on stand, you're facing away from the tree, and in a saddle system, you're facing towards the tree. So you have to work yourself around the tree just opposite in a saddle versus in a hang-on or a climber. So yeah, it does take a little bit of time getting used to. You have to worry about your foot position a little bit, but your T-form still stays the same from the hips up. Nothing changes there. You might have to swing a little bit instead of stand and spin, but everything's easy enough to learn if you put your mind to it. I promise. If I'm able to learn it, everybody can. So is there going to be a setup that's clearly the best and clearly the front runner and clearly the winner out of all three? No. The answer is no. Everybody's hunting situation is a little bit different. Everybody's style of hunting and their budget and the type of game, how often they get to hunt during the season, it's all dictated right here. If you don't get a whole lot of time to hunt, you got a lot of straight trees where you are, maybe you rifle hunt a lot or that's the only time you get in the woods, I strongly recommend a climber. Get yourself a cheaper climber, find yourself the areas you want to hunt out of, get used to climbing. The whole system is there. There's no learning how to throw sticks around a tree, how to get cam buckle straps onto a hang-on stand or onto a predator platform. You can just climb up the tree, hook in your safety harness, sit down, and get on to hunting. Also, I consider climbers in terms of their beginner use to be really safe, and particularly if it's a closed-in climber like this one is. You're going to be inside this thing the entire time. It's really hard to fall off, really, and particularly really hard to fall out of a climber, particularly one that has a closed bar. So if you're somebody who's kind of afraid of heights or just kind of dipping your toes into the world of whitetail hunting, give a climber a shot. See how you like it. If you have all those straight trees in the woods around where you hunt, give it a go and enjoy it. If you want to be a little bit more mobile, a little bit more run and gun, or the areas that you hunt don't really have a whole lot of straight trees, they're more S-shaped and got branches sticking everywhere, a hang-on or a saddle system is going to be for you. You can really shave off a whole lot of weight depending on how far you go up in price point. There are options galore nowadays. More and more people want to go in deeper, hunt further onto public land or even private land if that's something you do. You can really find a hang-on or a saddle system that will work well for you. Now, if you still hunt an area that has a lot of straight trees, I'm not saying you can't use a hang-on or a saddle. Here in Pennsylvania, we are loaded with straight trees with no branches for at least 30, 40 feet up in the air. So I'm not saying you can't hunt out of a straight tree, but if you have a lot of areas where it's going to be thick and swampy, you have a lot of trees that are kind of brushy, you have a lot of evergreens or a lot of pines, a hang-on or a saddle system is definitely going to be a way to go. So the question I get a lot then is, do I need to go with the saddle if the hang-on is going to work in the exact same tree? Well, that's all completely up to you. Now, for me, because of my back issues, the saddle was a must for me. I had to learn to do it. I was too uncomfortable sitting on just a little foam pad on a piece of metal 20 feet up a tree. I had had to learn to be a little bit more comfortable. Also, and I'll kind of just throw this in as a side note, I cannot sit still. I'm a fidgeter. I just can't do it. I have young kids at home. I have a high energy level and I can't sit still. Sitting on a tree stand, my legs would bounce up and down. I kind of get a restless leg syndrome feeling, if you will. In a saddle, that all went away. I was able to kind of shift my weight a little bit, bend my knees, get into the tree, stand up, put pressure on one foot, put pressure on the other foot, kind of twist my back, lean back, recline. I could do 77,000 different positions to get myself comfortable, get out my wiggles, get out my squirms, and help myself be able to make it through a hunt. Let's face it, if you're bored in a tree, there's very little that's gonna snap that boredom except for seeing a deer. And if you're sitting there 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hours and you haven't seen a thing, it gets a little tedious. And on a hang-on stand, I was dying for movement. So out of a saddle, that was the perfect thing for me. Using a platform like this, I was able to shift my feet, do all those things. I'm not saying that that's the kind of thing everybody needs, because everybody fidgets on stand. But for somebody that was as bad, as ADD ridden, if you will, as I am, it was the perfect way to go. So that's all for this video. I tried to include as much as I possibly could, but if I left something out, could you please follow the links in the description below and hit me up on Facebook and Instagram. Leave a comment here on YouTube. My email's down there as well if you want a more personal touch. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful creation, and we'll get to see you next time.